Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my review of 50 Shades Freed. I'm gonna just start the video off right here by saying, if you're looking for a roasting of this film, if you're looking for a big rant, if you're looking for someone who just goes off on the 50 Shades franchise, this is not the review for you. The truth is, I actually don't hate the 50 Shades of Grey franchise. Certainly it is a franchise that has its flaws, but I generally think it aims for a goal and more or less finds its way within that goal. There is some entertainment here, and when you're a single spinster like me, I guess living the fantasy is a little bit easier. And that's pretty much the case here with 50 Shades Free. Was it great? No. Were there a lot of problems with the actual filmmaking itself? Certainly. But did I enjoy it for what it was? More or less? Yes. So let's go ahead and talk about the positives. First of all, I think both of our actors put in a good performance here. Again, it's a little bit relative, but this is by far the best I've seen Jamie Dornan. He goes through a bigger gambit of emotion than he went through in the first two combined. And then Dakota Johnson is back to being closer to how she performed in that first film. I actually think she was one of the big highlights of that first film and think she got way too much hate because her performance was actually good. Second film, not so much. But here, I think she is back to visibly trying and putting in an effort, and I think their chemistry is also stronger here than it has been in the previous entries. I also think Rita Ora is just kind of a magnetic presence on the screen. Is she a great actress? No, and actually she overacts quite a bit in this movie. But in comparison to the rest of the backup actors, the background characters, who were mostly really bad, Rita Ora was like a burst of fresh air. She just brings energy, she brings life and charisma onto the screen each and every time her character pops in. I also think the film is beautiful. The settings and cinematography look really, really good for most all of the film. As we're hitting those landscape shots, as we're exploring houses, or these new kind of exciting places, I think it looks gorgeous. It does kind of sell you on wanting to go visit there and be a part of this. And that's so important in a film like 50 Shades because this is selling a fantasy. This is all about the fantasy of what you're watching. And I think that's where the film mostly does well. It's not only in making everything look like this beautiful fantasy, but it is selling this fantasy of this rich, handsome guy and this love story. We do get into some shaky ground that we'll talk about in the negatives. We especially get this grand montage at the end that I was bracing myself to be horrible, and it sold me. I actually was like, oh, that actually was really a nice tie-in and a nice conclusion for this franchise. They placed it over the most popular song in the franchise, and I have to say, Ellie Goulding does some heavy lifting on the scene itself. I thought the entire ending montage was really nice and a nice callback for those who have seen all three films now and who have enjoyed the series. We get a scene right after that I didn't like quite as much, but what can you do? And I just mentioned Ellie Goulding and the music. The soundtrack is awesome. I have to say, even if you really don't like these films, I think it's pretty hard to deny that the soundtracks are at least solid. I think all three soundtracks at this point were actually really good and had some really good music to offer. So, once again, the soundtrack is great. Score, not great. Now I want to touch on the conflict because it kind of wanes in and out of both positive and then will lead us into my negatives here. So we have this conflict of a past character that comes back and is kind of this stalker-esque story. So for the positives on why I think it was good, because it moves our story along. Otherwise, I think we had gotten to a point in just the love story aspect where it would have felt stale. We would have kind of lost all energy, and the beginning of the film actually does lose a lot of energy, and it's slow to get moving. But once we start introducing these conflict aspects, it moves a little bit. It gives us direction, and it gives us something to move toward. However, overall, the conflict just didn't really work. So while it kept us moving in a Lifetime movie direction. It kept us moving in that like super scandalous, cheesy direction, and it gets real cheesy within that conflict itself. But also, it really, really helped to highlight the super possessive, ridiculous behavior of Christian Grey. I do think Christian Grey gets a nice overall story arc. It's not really developed as much as it needs to be, but wow, with this like kidnappy conflict going on, he gets very, very possessive. And it also highlights the imbalance in this relationship and the very much abusiveness that this series is criticized for. It gets highlighted in high beams in this film, and it all centers around that conflict, and the conflict gives it all an out. It gives it all an excuse. So that's why I think it's overall a negative. But furthermore, and the big issue with this film as well as the previous films, the script is horrible. There's no way around. The dialogue is still no better than it has been. The storytelling is not good, and the script is just a mess. That's plain and simple. And I think obviously that derives from very poor writing in the books themselves. They just weren't well written, and to adapt that, especially with E.L. James herself, like so heavily involved and not letting anyone else take creative ownership, we get a really, really messy script. And we get so many like cliched romance things thrown in here, between potential cheating to big grand proposals. As I said, we go down like the OWN network Lifetime type stuff with this stalker story, kidnappings, the whole 9 yards. Every cliched thing you could think of that all the Lifetime movies have, it's thrown in here. I actually do think there are a couple jokes in here that work really well and actually are pretty fun. There are fleeting, minuscule moments of shining goodness within the script, but for the most part, mess. The editing and the pacing also is all over the place. As I said, it starts off so painfully slow, and then it goes through these stretches, and then we just throw in random sex scene, and then we go back to the like actiony stuff. The editing and the pacing and the structure are all super, super sloppy. And then my final problem is another one I've had with the entire series. This is a sexy romance aimed at women. And I'm going to take a line from the film itself. It was like, boobs as far as the eye can see. Boobs, boobs, and more boobs. Which is just so strange to me that in a female-centric story, in a female-centric franchise that is selling erotic romance to a female audience, the female is still the one being physically exploited in a very uneven manner. So I just find it very strange that we went through all three movies in which Dakota Johnson's character is naked for no reason. Like, there are scenes where she's just kind of like walking around, and instead of putting on her bra, she puts on like stockings, and she puts on everything else but a bra. And it's like, oh, this is very weird. But overall, I think it sells what it needs to sell. We have the helicopters and the jets, the really nice, sexy cars, the wonderful wardrobes, the very attractive rich man, and it all just kind of works for the fantasy that it is selling. Unfortunately, some of the really negative aspects to the franchise get brought to the surface here in a way that I think is more evident than in either of the previous two. But the recommendation here is very easy and very simple. If you are a fan of the 50 Shades books, I say give this a full price ticket. If you have watched the other two films and enjoyed the other two films, I say give this a full price ticket. If you are not part of either of those groups, go ahead and skip it. This one will not change your mind. It will not make you think any more of the franchise. And you will not enjoy yourself. It will be money wasted for you. Just plain skip it. So, that is my review of 50 Shades Freed. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, click like down below, and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on our latest videos. Also, join in on the discussion. Are you excited to see 50 Shades Freed? If you have, what did you think of the film? And what do you think of the 50 Shades films in general? Let me know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!